instead of going right to the destination note, we're going to go under, then over, still over, then under, and back to the destination note there. All right, let's take a look at the advanced jazz blues progression. My name is Paul Tobey from jazzmental.com. You're going to want to know this because if you show up at a jam session and play a simple blues progression, then the other jazz musicians are going to be like, what are you doing? So this is really important. It's basic information. You absolutely need to know this, and we're going to take this video and dedicate it to this progression. Now, I think we're all familiar with the simple blues progression. If you take a look at your screen, you've got 4 bars of B flat, then you've got 2 bars of E flat, then 2 bars of B flat, then 1 bar of F, 1 bar of E flat, and then 2 bars of B flat. That makes 12-bar blues. Now, if we want to change that and make it into a standard jazz blues progression, here's how you do it. So the first change you're going to find is in the second bar when you have an E flat 7 chord, and then in the third bar back to B flat 7. So instead of just B flat 7 for 4 bars, it goes from B flat 7 to E flat, and then it goes to E flat 7, and then in the 5th bar it goes to E diminished 7th. So half step up from E flat, and you're going to hear that and why it sounds good. So E flat 7, E diminished 7th to B flat 7. And then you need a turnaround to get to this chord here, which instead of F7 is going to be C minor 7 and a 2-5. So C minor 7 to F7 to B flat 7. So in order to get there, you're going to need a turnaround here. So we're going to put D7 and G7, which is basically 2 dominant chords in front of C7. So D7 to C minor 7 to F7. So one more time, D7 to G7 to C minor 7 to F7 to B flat 7. Now you're going to need a turnaround at the end, so we're going to put G7, C minor 7, F7. This is basically 1, 6, 2, 5 in the key of B flat. So one more time for the entire progression. We're back to the top. Now, what I've decided to do to help you understand this progression a little bit better is to give you some idea of how you would play this with the trio. So what we're going to do is take a look at some rootless left-hand voicings to play over top of this. Therefore, I've written out the sheet music for you. It kind of makes things a little bit easier. So take a look at the left-hand voicings. We're going to analyze them just a little bit. So first off, we've got a B flat 7 chord built-in force, this chord right here. Now it says A flat no chord because it doesn't really understand without a bass note, but if we put a bass note in, now I've got a B flat 7 13 chord. Okay? And then when we go to E flat 7 and play this voicing, of course we're talking about this one right here. And then we're going back to B flat 7, and then we're going to sidestep this up a half step. So how would this sound if the bass is going like this? Now, this is what you would play with the left hand. We'll get to the right hand in just a moment. For now, let's continue on down a little bit to check out the next line where it's going from E flat 7 to E diminished 7. So this is our voicing for E flat 7, same as we had before. And then just change a few notes to get to this E diminished 7th chord, and then back to B flat 7. And then there's our 2-5 heading to C minor right here, where we've got D7. This is 2-5 of C minor. So this is the 8th note that anticipates D7. It's played like this. and then G7 on this note, and then to C minor 7 here. So this is anticipating the beat. It's always on the and of 2 and the and of 4 that you should play when you're first starting out playing advanced blues, because that rhythm really keeps that swing going, and it's important to play it like this for now, and then you can switch up the comping a little bit later when you get more comfortable with it. And then we're going to end off with our C minor 7th chord here for 2 bars, then F7, and then B flat 7. G7, then C7, or C minor 7 in this case, and then F7. Now you can put a C7 there if you want to. There's not much difference between the chords. This is C minor 7, and this is C7. Put it over C, you can see it's a C9 chord, and if you change that one note, you get C minor. So either one will work at the end. You don't necessarily have to play a minor 7th to a dominant 7th chord. So this is the standard blues progression. I hope that works for you. It of course works for all jazz musicians. It's something that's pretty standard in the industry. They may require a few alterations here and there to the chords, but this is pretty standard. Then the next thing I would like you to wrap your head around is a blues scale, which I think you, obviously when you're starting to play jazz, is something you should be familiar with. Basically this. So 1, flat 3, 4, flat 5, 5 to flat 7, back to the root. So what I've done here is I've written it out on the beat to play with the left hand voicings. So you really want to keep that left hand going. And then when it gets to the last part, instead of playing just the blues scale, we're going to learn our first kind of over and under turn, which some people call an enclosure. All right, just before we go any further, if you like videos like this one here on the YouTube channel called Jazz Mental, I'd really appreciate it if you could reach down, hit the little thumbs up button. It really helps the channel when you do that. And if you'd like to subscribe to hear about upcoming videos, you can just hit the subscribe button and also the little bell, and we'll notify you of all the upcoming videos that we're making. So the destination note for that enclosure would be a chord tone, which in this case is the 3rd of a C minor scale, which sounds like this. Instead of going right to the destination note, we're going to go under, then over, still over, then under, and back to the destination note there. Nice line there. It's kind of like your first advanced jazz line using an enclosure or an over and under is what I call it. So what I've done to help you practice this is I've created a bass and drums backing track. It's 140 beats per minute, so it should be a good speed to practice it at. And we're going to play along with it right now to give you an idea of what the exercise would sound like when you've got it under your fingers. All right, there's an example of how the exercise would sound like with the backing track. I'm going to put a link to that sheet music and the backing track in just a few moments. What I'd like to do first is just give you an idea of what it would sound like an advanced jazz blues progression when you're soloing over top of it. Now, of course, this is a little bit more advanced. I just wanted to give you an idea of once you have the blues scale under your fingers and once you understand enclosures and the over and under patterns that we talked about, which come from the bebop language, what an actual solo over the advanced jazz blues progression would sound like. Let's have a listen to it now. So you can see that I've sped it up a little bit. It's about quarter note equals 164. You can see the left hand is sticking pretty much to the voicings that we talked about. Okay, that's where we're trying to get with our playing. Obviously, there's some limitations to that because we're just playing along with the backing track. And speaking of the backing track, I'd like to put a link to that track along with the sheet music from today's exercise so that you can download it and practice it. Just hearing about it and watching this video, that's not really going to get you anywhere. What you need to do is download the exercise and practice it, because the act of doing adds to your skill level, not just on a knowledge standpoint, but on an actual implementation standpoint. All right, once you've downloaded that and practiced it a bit, I might suggest that your next video should be this one.